Hey guys, I'm back at it again with another video. I haven't been able to post a lot of content this week because I was out of town for 2.5 days in Austin, Texas. And it was a wonderful trip, but I did not have a second to even think about posting. I brought a camera, I brought lights and everything to post a video, but there just wasn't time to do that. Other than posting a teaching earlier this week, I haven't posted anything. So I thought I would come on here and share with you one of the staples of this channel is going to be, and will continue to be, and will always be, testimonies. I love to share the testimonies of what God is doing on the planet right now, testimonies that I'm personally involved in, because I think it's important when you see some big name, someone, sharing a testimony. Sometimes it almost feels unattainable, but when you just have a normal guy like myself, when I share these kind of testimonies, it makes it feel like it's possible. I'm a major proponent of the value of testimony. So I wanted to share with you some testimonies from last weekend when I did a New Age psychic fair kind of thing. Not to go do New Age stuff, not to go do psychic stuff, but always like to wait a little bit before I share these testimonies in a content format, because I don't want to ever leverage or utilize these testimonies just as pieces of content. I never want to desire getting a testimony in order to leverage it for attention or anything like that. So I purposely waited a bit to share these testimonies, but I have two in particular from this last weekend that I got to do this fair with a good friend of mine whose name I'm sure, if you know me and who you probably know who I'm talking about, but I'm not going to share my friend's name because of safety reasons. He ministers in a very unsafe area of the world a good chunk of the year, so I'm not going to share his name here, and I'm also not going to share the names or pictures on this format of people that I got to pray for. But just for a little context, I'm going to share these two with you, but for a little bit of background, we've done these psychic and New Age fairs quite a few times now. I actually did the first one I ever did. I actually just went there with a good friend of mine, a different friend, but a good friend of mine, and we just walked around praying for people. Well, my good friend that I do these with now, he had the idea of getting a booth. Instead of just walking around, why don't we get a booth and have people come to us? And so adding that booth aspect to it really takes it to the next level. And so we've been kind of honing and fine-tuning our approach and in how we are ministering to people, because we don't want it to be a bait and switch kind of scenario. We want to be as upfront with the gospel as possible, but generally what we do is we offer healing and what we call soul cleansings, which is basically deliverance. But if you present it as deliverance at the fair, it's not going to work. And so we offer healings and soul cleansings, and people come to us, and we desire to address the problem first. And we know we're going to turn the conversation to the gospel, but we want to, believe me, we believe in preaching the gospel. And a lot of times Jesus would either preach the gospel first and then demonstrate healing, signs, wonders, and all of that. Or many times a healing, a sign, wonder, a deliverance or whatever would actually lead to the preaching of the message. Because of the environment that we're in, we take the route of addressing needs first, because most of the people that are there are looking for answers. They're looking for truth. They're looking for some sort of, they go to Reiki healers, they go to psychics, fortune tellers, and all of that, because they just want something. And so people come to our booth, and generally what we do is we address the need first, and then we find a hole or a bridge in that conversation to just boldly preach the gospel to these people. And we don't pull any punches. Initially, we feel it out, and we see where they're at, and we find the opening. So with that in mind, I just want you to know I'm not doing New Age Christianity stuff. We're literally just doing the basics of praying for the sick, casting out demons, and preaching the gospel. That's all that it is. It's just that we have to be wise as serpents and innocent as doves in this scenario. So I don't share which fairs I've gone to. I don't share the names of people, and I honestly don't even share the people that I do it with, just for the sake of protection. We want to maximize this opportunity and favor that has been afforded to us as long as possible. So this last weekend, there was a wonderful, like one of the sweetest humans I think I've ever met. And she came to our booth because she had constant 6 out of 10 pain in her hands and in her knees. And it was from rheumatoid arthritis. And she has had this rheumatoid arthritis for 23 years. Okay, so 23 years is a long time to have a sickness or an illness or to be dealing with this pain. It came on suddenly when she was a teenager. She doesn't know why. They never figured out why. She just had to deal with it. So she's been in pain for a very, very, very long time. And I could just feel the compassion of Jesus as I talked with her and talked through her story. And so in this whole process, what I did first is I prayed for her knees. And after 3 or 4 times of praying for the knees, she was squatting down, back, up and down, and was like, you see the look on her face. She could not believe she had no limitation and no pain in her knees whatsoever. She still had the issue of her hands. And so I addressed the knees first, and then I held her hands. I just held on to both of them. And I just commanded that same pain that's in her knees. I commanded it to leave her hands. And the pain in her hands completely left. And one of the little nuggets of information that she gave me in this process was that she loved to paint. And she actually has not been able to paint for a long time because it's so painful just to hold a paintbrush for any extended period of time. And so in this process, I prayed for her hands. I cast everything out. I did whatever I could do. And she was, doing this with her hands. And she's like, there's no limitation. I have no pain. And so I grabbed a notebook and gave her a pen. And I said, go ahead and write. And as she's writing, you can see the light bulb just going on in her head where she's realizing she has no pain as she's holding this pen. So she got, absolutely no pain left, no limitation. And you could see the light go on because she's realizing I'm doing this without pain for the first time. And so that was absolutely wonderful. And then in that process, I heard by the Spirit, I heard the word peacemaker in my spirit, man. And I said, hey, you were the peacemaker in your family when you were a child. When there was drama between 2 parties, you were always the one that was trying to be the peacemaker between the two and trying to just remain or keep the peace in the house. And she, as soon as I said this tears started coming out of her eyes, started going like this. And I knew it was the Lord, and I knew it struck something deep in her heart. And so I said, hey, the Bible actually says that blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. And I began to explain to her and I actually began to speak over her. I said, listen, that peacemaker thing in you is God designed you to be that way. That is, as a child of God, you were designed to be a peacemaker. And I said, but I feel like what's happened in your adult life now, she had a lot of anxiety, a lot of stuff like that. I said, I feel like what's happened now is you've actually overcorrected and you've gone so far to make sure that you keep the peace in your house that you've actually been willing to absorb other people's stuff in a way that is not healthy. And I actually believe and I see that God is giving you strategies and wisdom. He's going to begin to reveal to you how to keep the peace without absorbing and taking on people's stuff, and she just was, deer in headlights, just couldn't believe how much it was actually penetrating what was going on in her heart. And so I shared a few more things with her, but then I just let loose and just full on preached the gospel to her. And I told her, I said, listen, if I gave up a weekend with my kids and all I did in this entire weekend was just to sit right here in front of you and to tell you this message, it was worth it to me. And so I got to preach the gospel to her. She was like, this is so much more than I expected at any point in this weekend. And so I actually gave her a teaching that my friend does. We give up people a QR code. And she was able to I gave her that teaching to take home with her. And I said, I want you to watch this teaching, and it'll explain even more about what just happened to you and what's going on. And I felt at that moment that I was not supposed to push for anything more. But she walked away completely blessed. She said, I did not expect this at all. And just tears and all that. And then we did address the anxiety at the end of it after all of that. And she definitely felt better. Obviously, with anxiety in some forms, you can't measure it, but was able to just release peace and tell her how precious she was in God's sight. And I know when I lay my head on the pillow, she absolutely heard the gospel message. So that one was a blast. But I want to share with you my very favorite one from the whole weekend. There was more things that happened, but these were the main two. There was another lady she's my age, 34. And so what we do is we actually have people that come into the booth fill out a piece of paperwork that says, here's what I'm coming to you for. Like, there's physical pain stuff, there's emotional issues, soul issues, such as feeling like anxiety, feeling separated, guilty, condemned, all that kind of stuff. And then we also have one level farther, which is spirit issues. And we don't have it listed as that, but other kinds of issues, which are, when people have tormenting spirits, they have a deep sense of condemnation, things like that. And one of them being an inability to connect with God. So she had, on her emotional side, she had every single box checked. I mean, every single one, except for one, which was suicidal, like, ideation. And so she also had, in her arm, she had a nerve that was all messed up because it had actually been moved by doctors. It was rubbed on by a bone or some nasty thing. She was like, don't touch the scar, I don't like it. And so she had this nerve issue, and it caused, some numbness and some pain in her arms, but that wasn't kind of the main thing on her heart. The main thing was that she lives with constant fear and anxiety and nightmares regarding her and her children being drowned, killed. It's like tormenting spirits at night. And part of how that manifests is that she actually has shortness of breath. I don't know if any of you have ever had like the kind of anxiety where you actually have like a limit on your chest and you can't physically breathe. You can't get a full breath in. It was like that level. And she said at that night that it was so bad that she was like barely able to get a full, even close to a full breath in. So that was kind of the main stuff that was on her heart. And so in that process of talking to her, I got a word of knowledge. And she had put nightmares on there, but I got a word of knowledge, and I was like, hey, do you deal with sleep paralysis? Because I heard sleep paralysis in my head. And she said, I have once. And she said, in the dream, in that sleep paralysis state, I was frozen to my bed, tears coming down my eyes. I couldn't do anything about it. And she said, a hooded figure walked into my room and stared at me, and I kept trying to tell it to go away, but I couldn't do anything. And so that at that moment she was, terrified, and she said it was a hood. And as soon as she started saying, she was talking about the figure, I said, a hooded figure. And she said, yes, this hooded figure. And she said it was almost like there was smoke around them. And so she had that happen once. And then in the process of talking about that, I said, have there ever been another sleep paralysis thing like that before? And she remembered at that moment. She goes, oh yeah, when I was a little girl, I had a old looking woman that I knew wasn't real, but was like a spirit, come into my room and actually try to choke me in my sleep. Like I was awake, but she was choking me. And so we really addressed that first. We addressed the anxiety and the chest tightness. And so I prayed over her. I cast that spirit of death off of her. I removed that anxiety. I mean, I just addressed it first with deliverance, and she could breathe again. She's like, she couldn't believe she could actually breathe again. And so there was just this lightness. She's like, I feel so light. I feel like there's bubbles inside of me. I can't describe it, but she had that anxiety, that heaviness completely left off her chest, and she felt so good. And so there was still stuff on her list. And so I said, okay, now that we've kind of dealt with this stuff, tell me a little bit more about this inability to connect with God. And at that point, when she started talking about that, she actually started crying. And I kind of asked, what does that mean to you? What does it mean to connect with God, or your inability to connect with God? And she's kind of starting to, explain herself. And I just went right into the gospel message. And I explained to her that that is actually truly her real desire. That is her deepest desire. And most of those things that are going on the rest of her sheet, most of the issues that were on the rest of her sheet, I was like, they will honestly best be addressed by addressing this main thing. And so I said, it's kind of the crux of all the issues above. And when I talked to her about that, her heart just opened wide up. I mean, you could tell her heart was just wide open. And so my good friend that I do this with, he's behind, and he is just interceding over her. He's got his hands on her, and I'm sitting there right there holding her hands, looking her dead in the eyes, and just pouring out my heart about the gospel. And so I asked her about, her experiences with church. She had gone away from the church? Did she grow up in the church? And she said she went to a Catholic school as a kid, but never as an adult, has only gone to church once. She went with some friends, and she talked about how they sang a song there, and she goes, I cried the whole time and I don't know why. And it was something about how much he loves us. And I said, oh, I know that song. I said, How He Loves Us. And she's like, yes, that's the one. And so I said, do you know why you cried the whole time during that song? She's like, no, why? And I said, well, there's some ancient wisdom that says that eternity is in the heart of man. And I said, do you know who puts it there? And she said, let me guess, God. I said, yes, he does. And I said, there's something eternal in you that God placed in you that nothing on this earth can actually touch, that nothing on this earth can actually satisfy. And I said, there's something in you. There's eternity in you that longs to connect with the eternal one. And that eternal one is Jesus Christ. And so, I mean, she's crying as we're talking about this. You can tell that she's actually truly like experiencing the truth as I shared it. And so I also said, okay, and I got her phone number, and I just sent her another worship song. I was like, here, listen to this one on your way home. And so I walked her then through. She had actually had a lot of unforgiveness and bitterness towards her family, and I walked her through releasing her bitterness and forgiving her family, and that opened the door then for forgiveness in general. And so I reminded her, her inability to connect with God thing. I just was talking about the forgiveness that's available in Jesus Christ. And I just straight up asked her, holding her hands, looked right at her in the eyes, and I said, do you want to know him? Do you actually want to connect with him? And do you want to give your life to Jesus? And she said, I do. And so I held her hands right there and walked her through a prayer, and she gave her life to Jesus in that moment. And immediately got to give her a New Testament Bible, gave her a connect card to a local church that we were familiar with, that she could go to. I gave her one of my books as well, just as a gift. Like, just said, hey, read the Bible as this source of truth. I said, this may help you kind of have some context for it. And so she's holding the Bible, and she said, man, when I was a kid, my parents actually, in this Catholic school environment, she said, my parents actually made me read the Bible as punishment. We would have to read 5 pages of the Bible as punishment. And so it made me never want to read it. And she said, but what's just happened and what we're talking about, there's something in me now that like, it's making me want to read this. I really want to read this. And we told her, that's the Holy Spirit working on your heart. The Holy Spirit will draw you to this word, not away from this word. He'll draw you to this word. And so we kind of explained, and I had said to her, on a daily basis, I get to sit down in front of this word, and the Holy Spirit of God speaks to me through this word. I feel the peace of God through this word. I get washed by this word. And I said, this very same experience is available to you every day. This same experience that you're feeling right now, where your anxiety has gone, you've got freedom, you've released forgiveness, you've become free from bitterness, you've been healed. I said, this very thing is available to you every single day. And so I told her, if those dark spirits come back, if anything like that comes back, I want you to just say, I want you to just say the name of Jesus, because those things don't have any options. Whenever you speak the name of Jesus, they absolutely must go. And I told her, those fear issues that you're dealing with, I said, perfect love casts out fear. And I said, the only real perfect love that exists is the agape love, the love of God himself towards us. His agape love is perfect love, and that is the only answer for the fear that you've been dealing with. And I said, a lot of the booths around us and all of the different love and light and talk to your angels and all the stuff that's around us, I said, they act like it's love. They pretend, and it's all flowers and roses, and they act like it's love. I said, but it's not perfect love. It will never get rid of your fear. The only thing that will get rid of your fear is the love of God himself. And so I've got to just preach the word or preach the gospel to her. And she just kept stopping back, saying to us and stop back by our booth and just said, I've never felt like this before. I feel like I'm floating while I walk. And that lightness that she felt, you could see there was an actual real difference in her heart. And so I got the privilege of actually watching all the she had the anxiety stuff, she had the nerve issues, all that stuff. She walked away a completely different human than when she sat down at our booth. She got saved, she got healed, she got delivered. And I know in this moment, she got saved. It was absolutely genuine. She actually turned her life over to Jesus Christ. And we got the privilege of watching it happen. I got to hold her hands, look her in the eyes, and give her to Jesus Christ. And I can't think of a better privilege than that. And so, one of the things that I go through on a regular basis with doing this kind of ministry, every time I'm going to do it, I think through it again and again and again. And I think, this is a unique ministry. It's a tough ministry. And I always want to check my heart and make sure that we're going about it the right way. And it's hard when you look at the fruit. Every encounter is not perfect. We have some bad encounters. We have some mixed encounters. We have some good encounters. But we're marking success by how many people do we get to share the gospel message with each time. That's success. We want them to get saved, healed, and delivered. And we see a lot of that stuff. But success, the way I'm measuring success personally when I'm doing this is, do I know when I go to bed at night, lay my head on the pillow, as many people as possible are hearing the gospel message? Because if that is the case, then it's a success. Because sometimes you sow, sometimes you reap, sometimes you water, sometimes you plant. But the constant through the whole thing is the gospel message. And I feel so lucky. I guess lucky is the wrong word. I feel so blessed whenever we get the chance to reap and actually see a soul saved from darkness, to know that heaven is going crazy and celebrating. But I also see success as the girl that I talked to that I didn't get a decision from or anything like that. But man, she got impacted by God, and I got to give her the gospel message. The girl from earlier with the rheumatoid arthritis. So we're measuring success by how many times do we actually get to share the real gospel message with people. And I am just blown away by what God has been doing. This is longer than I really anticipated, but I wanted to share these testimonies with you because I want to spark your faith and your passion to share the gospel with people yourself, to actually step out. And when people have needs, meet them, pray for healing, pray for deliverance, pray for them to be freed from anxiety. Actually go for it when they actually address your needs, and use these opportunities as an on-ramp for the gospel. You will never regret, even if it blows up in your face, you will never regret being obedient and sharing the gospel with people. It really, honestly, isn't that hard. You don't have to be a Bible scholar. You just need some basic understanding of how the gospel works and how to talk to people. So I just wanted to share that with you. I hope that this lights your fire. I hope that this reminds you that Jesus is still doing these things today. And I pray that my testimony will create more testimonies in you, that it will give you the boldness to step out and do the stuff. So I bless you and I release you to do that. And I pray for boldness for you to step out and share the gospel, even in dark places. We'll talk to you soon.